We left off there in the beginning with the 17th verse, where it says, "Obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls, as they that must give account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you." So this is the second time in which the writer addresses issues of church leadership. It's interesting, as I was studying for the lesson and come across different people as they wrote about this, a lot of people struggle with this verse 17. And they struggle with it in the context of submitting to bad church leadership. That's the way that they'll write it. But it's important to note that, and I'll try to say this right, it's only taken me 10 years of practice to get this saying correct, but a text without a context is a pretext for a proof text. Did I get it right, hon? It took me 10 years to get that right. That's a very fancy way of saying that if you are not careful when you look at Scripture, if you just pull things randomly and don't read it in its complete setting, that you are prone to misunderstanding and to having error in your understanding. So this is a classic example of that, where people are struggling with it and reading it and saying, "Oh, but what, if your church leadership is bad, you shouldn't be submitting to them." That's not what the writer is referring to here. We know this because I said this is the second time that he talks about church leadership in the same chapter. And the first time, if we'll recall, is over there in verse 7, where he talks about remembering them, considering their conversation. In other words, he has established that what he is talking about here are leaders in the church who are doing their absolute best to follow what thus saith the Lord. Okay? So that is something that you have to keep in mind. That's something that you have to frame the construct in. So that when in Hebrews here, where we're seeing it says to submit to this leadership, it is talking about a godly submission in the way of doing what is right. Because he's talking about the same leaders in 17 as he talked about in 7. People who are setting a good example. So that when that good example is set before us and they encourage us to do godly things, we need to have enough God about us to submit. For those who may have joined just a little bit late, we're in the 13th chapter, starting there at the 17th verse. So we should submit to that. Boy, we don't like that type of talk, especially in an American society. You're not the boss of me. Ain't nobody the boss of me. Folding your arms doesn't work very good over a mic. Apologize. Is that not our attitude? You not the boss of me. Nobody going to tell me what to do. If you look at marriage ceremonies, what's one of the hardest things that people deal with in a marriage ceremony? So they deal with it so hard, in fact, that it has actually been taken out of so many ceremonies. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord, from Ephesians, the 5th chapter. Ooh, he has to go there. He's talking about submission. Oh, I don't like it. But here's a hard truth. We all submit to something. You may say nobody's the boss of you, but go to your job and tell your boss that. You ain't the boss of me. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to agree with you. Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm not the boss of you. You have no boss because now you're unemployed. Good luck with that. If the United States government was of such a mind, they can take everything you own, and there is not a thing you can do about it. You don't think you submit to the government? I don't know about you, but they don't ask my permission to take Social Security, federal withholdings. They don't ask for my permission to do any of that. In fact, it's Haddon's great dream to somehow overthrow the government just so he doesn't have to pay taxes. They don't ask our permission. We just submit. We all submit to something. In the context of Ephesians there, where it's talking about wives submitting to their husbands, it's talking about a godly submission to a husband who is to love his wife as Christ loved the church, which means, husbands, you give your lives for your wives and for your family. You dedicate everything that you do to their well-being. And wives, you trust in that. If you have that husband that is trying his dead level best to do that, you trust in that. And there may be times when the husband says, I think this is best for the family. And you're not so sure about that. You support that man. Same as it is in the church. Sometimes our leadership, you may look at it and say, I don't understand the importance of reading my Bible every day. Well, God bless your heart. Maybe you don't. But it's important. It's to your good. It's for your good. Try it. See if God doesn't grow you. See if God doesn't mature you. We do not have perfect knowledge. We do not have perfect understanding. None of us. Absolutely none of us. So part of living that Christian life is acknowledging the one that does have that perfect knowledge and that perfect understanding, and be willing to submit to that. Pride is a deadly thing. It is in the heart of us all. It creeps into the heart of us all. Now, once again, just as in verse 7, there is a double, I'm going to use the words double meaning, but not in the sense that we normally mean. Usually when we say a double meaning, we say something like, well, I'm saying A, but I really mean B. I'm not using it in that phrase, in that sense. I'm using it in the sense of it means A and B concurrently. So while verse 17 definitely talks to us as members of the church and definitely has an exhortation, a challenge for us as members of the church, it also is a grave warning as in the church leadership. And both meanings are absolutely true. And we're going to get, Lord willing, time permit, we'll get down in a little bit later when it talks about just how much can be contained in a verse. But it admonishes there that it lets us understand that church leadership are they who watch for your souls, as they must give an account. As I said Wednesday night, I'm not about to say this to elicit any sort of sympathy. That's not its design. Its design is to give a perspective. But as a teacher, I feel the weight and should feel the weight of your spiritual maturity. It is what I should wrestle with as I prepare to teach a lesson. God, what would you have me teach? What points would you have me illustrate? What things should be emphasized, Lord, to help the class, to grow the class, to plant, to water? And I have to give an account if I don't do that. If I even worse, is it worse? I don't know. Even in addition to, if I divide something incorrectly, I have to give an account for that. I have to give an account for every time I stumble in my speech. Anytime, if I do something with my body motions that somehow distract you and peel your thoughts off, I need to be cognizant of that. I have to give an account. Because everything that I do as I stand up behind God's sacred desk or God's sacred table, wherever you might be teaching a class, however I might be teaching it, everything that I do should be within one purpose in mind, one singular focus in mind. And it's the same focus as it should be for the entire church. And everything that we do, it's not complicated. It's to draw you closer to Christ. One singular goal, that's it. And I must be aware of that is something that falls on my shoulders. You need to be aware of that because it helps you understand the motives. If church leadership is being where it's supposed to be, and as we said from verse 7, we understand that's the context in which this is being written. The writer is writing to these people saying, I know who your leaders are. I know what they're about. They are watching over your souls. Understand their motives. And so, understand that what they're doing, even if it's flawed, they're trying to do what's best for you. Even if it's ham-handed, even if it maybe is a complete disaster, they're trying to do what's best for you. I have the privilege right now to be in that situation at work, and I remind our young engineers of this because I will tell them things they don't want to hear. They don't like it. And I've asked them this on several occasions. I'm like, why do you think I do this? I have intentionally leveraged myself into a position. I will never get a promotion. I will never step up on the ladder. My career, if you want to call it a career, is dead. And it's by my own doing. I took it into the back of the cornfield and put 2 in the back of its head. And I'm okay with that. Not a complaint. Say it with a little bit of joy. So I asked them that, why do I tell you this? It's not to make myself look good. I can't make myself look any worse. I've tried. It's for your benefit. The same principle. It's the same principle to understand about our leadership. So that we become a help to them as they shepherd over us. Moving on to 18, where it says, pray for us, for we trust we have a good conscience, in all things willing to live honestly. But I beseech you the rather to do this, that I may be restored to you the sooner. I've said it before, and I'll say it again in verse 23 makes me really believe it. I believe this was written by Paul. And the reason I want to put it is to put this into a particular context. From what we understand about Paul, we think that in his latter years of life, he was going blind. In that day and age, to go blind is to become, for all intents and purposes, useless. You are at the mercy of others. How do you provide for yourself? And then you throw on top of that being Paul, the epistle apostle, the one who writes. Paul's the writer of the bunch. And God, you're going to take away my vision. I say we seem to think this is the case because we get very few instant glimpses of this in his epistles. I had a thorn in the flesh. I don't think Paul had a bad run-in with a rose bush. I don't think that's what he was talking about. But he makes it very intentional not to explicitly say what is wrong. And if this is Paul who writes this, look at what he says. Pray for me that I may come to you and help you. This was not a case of Paul being unwilling to share his burdens. This was not a case of Paul being emotionally closed off and saying, I'm okay, don't pray for the things that bother me, not willing to share his burdens with the church. Most of you were either here in one form or the other Wednesday night. You clearly know that's not how I believe that the church should operate. This is not Paul doing that and being obtuse. This is Paul actually being right the opposite. Paul is saying, pray for me that I can come to you because that is my heart's burden. You see, as we grow closer to Christ, the things that trouble us, the things that burden us, begin to evolve because we set our focus on spiritual things, on heavenly things. And Paul believed that prayer was essential. He believed that prayer was effective. And so he asked the church to pray for the thing that was most burdening his heart. I don't have the liberty to minister to those that I wish to minister to. See, we understand this when we begin to look at scriptures such as in James. I love the book of James. James is a mind twister. Not in its ability to be understood, not that it's in its complexity to be understood. It's a mind twister, and it'll pull your perspective and turn it up on its head and say, no, you need to look at it this way instead. From whence comes wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your lusts that war in your members? Ye lust and ye have not, ye kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not because ye ask not. Ye ask and receive not because you ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lusts. See, as we begin to continue to develop in Christian life, our wants and our desires will change. And Paul's desire here was, pray for me that I may be with you, that I may be restored to you the sooner. Well, a wonderful way to begin to wrap up the letter. And he continues, now the God of peace, that brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, that great shepherd of the sheep, through the blood of the everlasting covenant. Now, most often we are tempted to read this, now the God of peace. We think of world peace, kumbaya, John Lennon, whatever. And I love that the scriptures are so very precise in this, because if you read beyond just God of peace, you understand that's not the peace he's talking about. When the angels began to sing, peace on earth, goodwill toward men, they didn't think Herod, would be sitting there with a flower going, No, they knew Herod was about to destroy babies. The peace is the peace that we have with God. That is the peace it's talking about. So this God of peace that made peace possible by bringing Christ to life from the dead, who is that great shepherd of us, who loves us, who is tender with us, who watches after our souls, because of his everlasting covenant that he purchased with his own blood, make you perfect in every good work to do his will, working in you that which is well-pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. We could camp right here for a year and not be done unless we all died. You'll hear me use a big word from time to time, sanctification. If you want a working definition for sanctification, I just read it to you. That's it. Making you perfect in every good work. If you want to go to Webster for it, it says it's the action of making something holy, the action or process of being freed from our sin or purified. It is the goal of Christ in your life to sanctify you, to free you from sin. To pry your fingers off of it, one by one. And you may be tempted to say, oh, well, but I'm saved. I'm saved. And I'm thrilled that you are. But we all grab hold of our sins and cling to them. You don't think I cling to pride? You don't think you do? Pride, jealousy, envy, anger, lust, malice. These are comfortable to us. I once heard hate described as something like this. Hate can become like an old shoe. It becomes comfortable and well-worn, and you wear it so often and wear it so much that you cannot begin to imagine life without it. And while that's certainly true of hate, you can fill in any sin of your choice there, and it become as apropos of a statement. Christ's chief desire is to work in us, to sanctify us, to purify us, to bring us closer to Him each and every day that we live. And it's for our good. Oh, the love that He gives us just in that act alone is... We as a human race are so lucky that I'm not Christ. Because in my impatience, this is how I would deal with us. You're saved, quit sinning. What do you mean you just lied? He's dead. What about you over there? What are you, jealousy? Really? You're gone. Is there anybody left, Lord? Oh, that guy out there, he's not humble. He's gone. That's how I would deal with this. I truly would. I don't have the patience to deal with us. But Christ, in his mercy, in his kindness, says, I saved you, son. Come on, you can do better than that. You know better than that. Do better than that. Live better than that. Quit looking at yourself. Quit throwing the pity party. Quit worrying about your feelings being hurt. But Lord, you don't know how they've wronged me. What do you mean I don't know how they've wronged you? You're talking to the omniscient one. Yes, I know how they've wronged you. Have you seen what they did to me? You want to start comparing battle scars? Got some nail prints here. You need to be like Thomas. Well, I'm pretty sure I know how they've wronged you. I still am asking you. Help them, love them, encourage them, exhort them. Show your lost coworker what the love of Christ means. Furthermore, then we beseech you, brethren, and exhort you by the Lord Jesus, that as ye have received of us how ye ought to walk and to please God, so ye would abound more and more. For ye know not what commandments we gave you by the Lord Jesus. For this is the will of God, even your sanctification, that ye should abstain from fornication. And as you continue to read there in the 4th chapter of 1 Thessalonians, he starts going through a long litany list of things you just need to keep your nose out of. And once again, that was not written to lost people. That was written to people in the church. Christ begins to work in us, grow in us. And it is so sad to me that there are so many of us who would throw upon ourselves the label of Christian and yet become complacent in where we're at, all the while realizing, do we not realize that our lives are not static? We may be tempted to think that there are people out there, they've reached a certain spiritual level and then they just kind of are going along and along and along. They're not. You don't plateau. You either are growing or you're sliding back. How do I know this? Read of it in the Scriptures. Those who know to do good and to do it not, it is what? It's sin. I'm not sure who said that, but thank you. It's sin. If I know I need to be growing in Christ and I am not, it is sin. I've missed the mark. But you know what? Here's the tricky thing about sin. Let me pull back the scope of my mind for a minute and hopefully try to share it with you. Sin is legion. Well, I'm not reading my Bible today. That's a sin. Yeah, you're right. You're not studying in the Scriptures. That's a sin. But you knew to do it and you didn't. So guess what? Let's tack on rebellion to that. That's rebellion. When you know to do good and you don't do it, it's rebellion. Why didn't you do it? Well, I'm busy. Oh, you're busy, so something's more important to you than God. Let's tack on idol worship to that. How do you lead your family, Matt, if you don't equip yourself in the Word of God? Oh, let's tack on selfishness to that. Let's tack on not caring about your sons. Let's tack on not caring about your wife. Do I need to keep going? Because I can all day long. Sin is legion. Do we think it's coincidence that the devil called himself that in that poor soul? We are legion. So if we're not growing, we're sliding back. Oh, it may not be evident to those around us. And frankly, folks, I don't care. I don't care if it's evident to me or not. What I care about is, are you growing toward Christ? And am I doing everything that I can in my power to help you grow toward Christ? Ultimately, your soul's condition is a matter between you and Christ. I don't need to be involved, nor should I want to be involved, except to say, go to Christ. Go to Christ. Climb up on my shoulders. Step on my face if you must. If that gets you closer to Christ, here. Plant those big number 12s. But that's what sanctification is. It is that growing. And as it happens in our lives, it's wonderful. Understand the intimacy with which Christ speaks here in the 15th chapter of John. I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me. Christ gave us a definition of sanctification wrapped up in the context of such tender intimacy. I cannot explain it. See, that sanctification process is Christ coming through and saying, that's not godly snip, that's not godly snip, that's not godly snip. Let's cut that out, let's cut this out. But he does that so that we may abide in him, that he may abide in us. Part of what I believe is the exhortation that I would love, that I am called to present to the body, is this glimpse of abiding in Christ. To know him, to love him, to be loved by him. Yes, he is my master. Yes, I bow my knee to him. Yes, he is the judge. Yes, he is all these things. And if I get started on the attributes of who God is, praise his name for all that he is, there's not enough day left in this particular day or in the next 64 million days. But we abide. We have the privilege and the opportunity to abide in him. He condescends to abide in me, to know that wheresoever I go, he is with me. He never leaves me. He never forsakes me. We all have the privilege of being able to attain that, to have that, to possess that. He desires that of us. So much so that he was willing not just to prune us, not just to sanctify us, not just to be patient with us, and oh, Lord, forgive me for how I try your patience, but that he died for us. And I beseech you, brethren, suffer the word of exhortation, for I have written a letter unto you in few words. I said that we would hopefully get to how much a verse contains. This is a power punch verse to me. This is one of those I could camp here for a really, really, really long time. I love the phrasing of it. I love the precision of the wording of it. It's one of those verses that makes me convinced that this was not written by human hand in its entirety. To beseech is to ask someone urgently and fervently to do something, to implore, to entreat, to beg. I beg you, brothers, suffer. Whoa, wait a minute, you want us to suffer? What are you asking? What are you asking us to suffer? You just suffer what I just wrote to you. In a few words, meaning I could have made this a lot longer, as if 13 chapters wasn't enough. But what the writer was saying, what I believe Paul was saying, I know what I have written unto you hurt. You know, that's the thing about the gospel. It hurts us. I have never had God deal with my sin in a pleasant manner. Now, I realize that's all my fault. That's not his. In fact, I was talking to someone this week, and I actually used this phrase. I said, have you ever had God punch you in the face? God has to do me that way. It gets my attention. It's not fun. Oh, but it's for my good. Oh, it's for your good. And so the writer here is saying, I beseech you, I beg you, I am pleading with you with all that I have within me. What you have read has hurt you. It has pierced you to the quick. It is sharper than any two-edged sword, rightly dividing our hearts right in two. Suffer it. I beg you. It's for your good. Why? Because it is a word of exhortation. It's a 50-cent word. It's a college word, I know. As we understand it, the Greek from it is parakaleo, which combines para, which means close to. It's where we draw parallel, like parallel lines. It's where that comes from. It's close to, but kaleo is a call. In other words, it is to make a call close to someone. It's up close, it's personal. His use of exhort in this context seems to combine two meanings, to admonish and to encourage. In other words, he's saying, I am begging you, suffer this. Because yes, I know it is an admonishment. I know it is saying there are things that need to be corrected. There are things in your life that need to change. But you can do it. Why? Because of Christ. Because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. In this world we have trouble, we have tribulation. Be of good cheer. Christ has overcome the world. So please listen to what has been said. As I said, we could spend a very long time here, and I don't want to tax you. This verse very much reminds me of the song, Wayne. Could we the ink with ocean fill, and were the sky of parchment made, were every stalk on earth a quill, and every man a scribe by trade, to write the love of God above would drain the ocean dry. Nor could the scroll contain the whole, though stretched from sky to sky. Seems as if the writer here said, I know I haven't written enough, but I could have written so much more and still not be done. I could say the same this morning, what I exhort you to do. What this whole letter has exhorted us to do is to give Christ the preeminence in our life. Put Him first. And so he winds up the letter. Know ye that our brother Timothy is set at liberty, with whom if he come shortly I will see you. Salute all them that have the rule over you, and all the saints. They of Italy salute you. Grace with you all. Amen. The third exhortation to leadership is to salute. Be respectful, be kind toward one another. Give honor to whom honor is due. Notice there that he ends it with grace. The unmerited favor of God. God giving us something that we do not deserve. Grace be with us. And so we come to the close of the book of Hebrews. Does anybody have any questions or any comments pertaining to Hebrews? There's a few logistical matters that we need to attend to quickly. If not, so we've had some discussions about, okay, where do we go after Hebrews? And I will say this, I will always put this standing invitation open. And I think I said this at the beginning, Major, when I first started taking this class. If you ever come in here on a Sunday morning and there is a burden on your heart, there's a burden on your heart, period, that is important. And I am always willing to lay aside anything that I have studied to help us grow. The best classes I've ever taught have always had that standing invitation open, and somebody come in and say, I am struggling with this. And then we begin to take God's word and we apply it. So, and I'm also try to always be open to feedback. I don't know that this is the best format. Should I be up here? Should I take one of these down there? It makes no never mind to me. If it helps you guys, please let us know. Give us that feedback. If it needs to be more of a conversational instead of a harangue, listening to me for 45 minutes, hey, I'm glad to have that. I get tired of listening to myself. So please, all of that is a standing open door invitation. But with all of that being said, if God lets time stand, there will be another Sunday morning next week, and there needs to be a lesson taught from somewhere. And so trying to help unify, simplify, I'm at a little loss for adjectives, bring about some cohesiveness to hopefully our daily Bible reading and what we talk about on Sunday morning. I'm going to try to pattern the lessons after what you've read through the week. Now, that's not to say that I'm going to teach in its entirety everything that you've read all week. That's a stretch. That's going to be hard, and I feel like a lot of it would just be regurgitating the big concepts that you've probably already gotten. So what I'll try to do, and unless someone has a different idea of how to approach a lesson that's in line with the scripture reading for the week, but still just isn't regurgitating what you've probably already really grasped, I'll try to focus in on a specific area, and I'll do my dead level best to give you an inkling of what that is the week before. Ergo, next Sunday, I will most likely, unless God changes my heart and mind between now and then, or between now and when I start to study, or whatever, however you say that, I'll focus in on John 3:16. It will probably be one verse, and I'll probably cut it short, getting through one verse, getting through that verse. But that's where the focus will be, because I think it brings into a lot of the overarching themes of John. I know you're already a little bit past the 3rd chapter if you've started the reading, but that's the plan. Any questions? Any further questions or comments? Waxed a little long, I apologize. Folks, let's take a few minutes. Let's remember to pray for our pastor. Let us worship God with pure and unfeigned hearts. Thank you for your patience.